So what we did basically was when we were young, we just absorbed everything. And so you get a pass maybe because you're young, but at a certain point, usually called the age of consent, you don't get a pass anymore when you become an adult. And that's unfortunate too.
We're given all this stuff, which I've slowly been unfolding a little bit more and getting off the Watts case.
I think also as well, don't forget they're attacking our food, because if you're a meat eater, they're putting chemicals, hormones. I mean, it's surprising that we can stay alive. I just think we're one big experiment to them.
It does seem that way. But it seems like they're, also trying to figure out how to, they're using it. So if you do an experiment, you're going to use it for something. You're going to take the results and you're going to apply that somewhere else. So my interest is in what are they applying it to that we don't even know about? Like,
I mean, this, I've got more, but it blows my mind because everything's such a lie. I already put some of our history out about the castles and the pyramids and the children, and the fact that they've just sped the films up to all these. We don't want that. We don't want lots of swear. And I think that's what happened for me on eBay. I had an eBay shop, and when I started, it was great. Then they changed the algorithms, which is what YouTube has done. And then basically they were making way for big business, and that big business was all the big supermarkets with great big glossy pictures. I thought it was supposed to be eBay again for the people. Like YouTube is supposed to be a place where you don't want to be nasty and horrible. We don't want that. We don't want lots of swearing and people being rude and cursing. It's not that. But it should be a place where you're allowed to have a voice.
Right,
Nobody watches your videos. No one watches them. What harm can we really do? We're a voice.
You know what it is, and YouTube didn't start out this way. It's like YouTube was an alternative to television, and what they've done is they brought television to YouTube. So basically, what has happened is that because they started losing so many viewers and TV was going down, was plummeting, they partner with all ABC News, and you can see they even promote them and have them trending on YouTube. So they brought TV to YouTube. So YouTube has almost become this paid subscription television service. So they're going to try to continue to keep people tuned in or brainwashed no matter what. So they want to go to another platform. Well, let's follow them to the platform they're on, and we're going to still push this agenda to them. And we're going to push everybody else who try to escape television. We're going to push them out. The truth speakers,
I'm sure,
the truth speakers.
Patricia, we came to YouTube to get away from television, to find those bits of truth and things we wanted. There are lovely people, but we're given all this, and then we obviously, it goes on and on that we're given. And this is what people are watching, is this kind of stuff, instead being drawn into this.
That's the problem. Yeah, it's unfortunate what the big boys are doing, but we take the blame too. We were ignorant. We were not conducting ourselves like adults, because if we were, we wouldn't have been so fooled. So now that we're starting to recognize that fact, you can't just say it's all on them. At least half of this is on us for acting like children.
What, you mean if we take responsibility for ourselves, you mean?
Well, for swallowing anything, it's like walking in a place you've never been and all these people give you food and say, here, there's good food, swallow it. Is that what you do? Or do you say, wait a minute, what am I swallowing? Well, apparently we've lived for many decades in this country swallowing whatever the hell we were handed. And that's not what an adult human being does.
Obviously, I'm going to play a little bit of Robert's now to show you what he thinks. Loads of us think things. We're all kept separate, but there are loads of us who understand that everything is a lie and that we get caught up in all these lies. This channel shows you who, what and what. And this is Robert's channel, by the way, just showing you some of the things that he's into. he takes many pictures of the sun and the moon. He has hours and hours and hours of it. Anyway, that's his channel. On to what he says.
All right, so this is Robert Forsch with the YouTube channel Truth, and I wanted to show you the calm before the storm. And this is our backyard area. So we've got silent weapons for quiet wars and the impending collapse of society as we know it. Of course, the swans are oblivious to the impending collapse of humanity. Most of humanity is. And so what I'm doing with this, I'm basically alerting people to the reality that artificial intelligence has administrative controls of the power grid, the flow of information, the availability of credit or purchasing power, and the information that countries go to war for, and populations of society of a given group support those wartime decisions. We've been manipulated our whole life. There's a lot of mystery in history. We don't know what we don't know. I include myself in that. As I find out, I make that information available. This is Robert Forsch with the YouTube channel Truth. Feel free to reach out anytime. Thanks.
Some people like to say that they live in the present, and some people say, think of the future. And some people have a bit with the past. Myself, I like the present, obviously, because that's where we are. There is a future, a bit unknown, but if you plant the seeds now, we'll have a much nicer future if we plant the right seeds now. And then there's a past. And a lot of us do want to know what's happened in the past, because it's like, who are we? Where are we if we don't know what our past is? So, a bit of the past and the present with the future of what we're being given just on this bit. Now, this is 10 Downing Street, and this is David Cameron. We're now going back a couple of prime ministers. Now, this is him coming out of the door with his family. Now, it's with the Telegraph. They filmed it. And just look what they gave us. Now, this is a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. And he's actually resigning because basically he wanted to stay in Europe. And the country voted to come out of Europe. So he felt that he had to leave. I suppose he did the honourable thing there in the midst of all this, but obviously he played his part, so yeah, and that's him coming up to the podium. But I mean, just look at the quality, look what they're giving us. That's the Telegraph, a well-known paper in the UK, and I mean, look at his daughter. So it's all superimposed, and none of that looks right either, does it?
Just throw gobs and gobs of money away at advertising if it didn't work.
I think it happens, because I remember we were watching a film once and we slowed it down and we could see the same thing. Suddenly this image comes up just for a second. This is what I'm finding on the Watts case. Just for a second. Just for a second. There's these things. But what it is on this sort of deepfake stuff, when people sort of talk about when they manipulate videos and that, they say slow it down because they cannot cover up all the mistakes. There's going to be mistakes in there, thank God. There's mistakes, so you can see them. So you know for sure that it's not real.
You know, the thing is, so the human eye and mind sees in about 28 frames per second. So any less, so say half that, 14 frames per second of an animation will look very choppy. 28 frames per second will look like a good animation, although 1,000 frames per second doesn't look much better than the 28 frames per second, right? So the question becomes then, why are they making all of the new digital televisions at hundreds of frames per second if it really doesn't make a difference to what we perceive and what we see? Unless you start to realize, well, wait a minute, that means they've got 80 frames in a second that they could potentially be, seeding our minds with ideas that they want us to have at a later point. And yeah, the national anthem on sign-off on those old television sign-offs is a really good example of the sort of things that they do. Although I think in our sort of modern era, they've come a long way. I mean, things that they push. They also have very overt things that they push with their narratives, and it is it's to manipulate people's minds. It is indeed a form of mind control.
Do you know what? This is what they did here. They do it all, and none of that looks right. I just stopped the video. It shouldn't do that, you know. Anyway, that's him saying goodbye with his family in 10 Downing Street. But that's Theresa May saying goodbye. Or I think she's resigning there, and then there's the goodbye. But look how close she is to the people when you play the video. Anyway, so yeah, but that's her leaving. Now look at the size of her. She is now decreased by size. She's tiny. She's absolutely tiny. Anyway, back to him. The quality of the Telegraph, 240. That's it. Anyway, so that's the distance, like I told you. But we get Boris yesterday, and look at the size of him. Oh, that was Theresa May. Boris coming into being Prime Minister. Boris, after his landslide victory Thursday. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean, guys? And that's her leaving 10 Downing Street. Look at the size of her. I did have a quick look. It goes back to maybe the Prime Minister before, which was a Labour Party. Anyway, that's David Cameron leaving again and looking quite tiny in the road, because they obviously film all this before they do it. And there he is, tiny. You've just seen Theresa May. There you go. That's the only distance. So why would they want to make him... Oh, and Boris. Look at the size of that. Tiny. Absolutely tiny. He'd be the size of a dwarf. No pun for the dwarves, just that they're lying about his size. Anyway, so that's the real distance. Oh, but look. Look how small he is. It's just utterly ridiculous. Even if they were filming him from slightly above like they are, there's no way he'd still look that small. And anyway, they'd zoom into him. I mean, look what they're doing. Do you see what they're doing to us?
Those of us who are beginning to trust in our connection to the all-permeating energy, there are times when not only can you choose to tap into that, and you can sense things that are hard to describe, and you're not sure what it is, and it's because you haven't had a lot of practice in doing so, but sometimes it comes to you. Sometimes the beings of the world come to you energetically. It's a little hard to explain, but sometimes you can feel overwhelmed because all of a sudden you feel, I want to say you realize, but it's really you feel so many of the things that are around, and the connectedness with so many things. And sometimes it comes in the form of these waves of emotion. Sometimes it's very blissful and happy, and you're really connecting to all of those energies out there that are so supportive and loving and caring. But then sometimes it's like you're grief stricken, and you can feel the world is dissolving away and falling apart. You can feel that the pendulum is coming to its lowest point, and you can feel the hatred and the negative energies out there as well. And it almost makes you want to cry. You know, you just want to break down and cry for no reason whatsoever. People might not even realize it. Much of the time, many of us can become overwhelmed and we don't know what's wrong. You know, we're just sad. We're just depressed out of nowhere, and we just feel so bad, and it's like we can't describe it, but this is what's going on. Subconsciously, your energy is so powerful, it's reaching out to the rest of the world, and you're feeling what's going on. And so we can be very, we wear our feelings on our sleeves, and we wear our emotions on our sleeves. And our emotions can be changed because we're so connected with those around us that we pick up on that energy. Our energy changes and fluctuates based on the energy that we are touching base with around us. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, makes sense, because
That's the past, the present, and of course Boris now as a Prime Minister is our future. Well, he's not my future, but people will feel that. But again, I can't get over the fact that only 6,000 people, I looked today, watched the ITV news. So if he got this landslide victory, how come on ITV, that one, then how come only 6,000 people watched it? If 67% of the people voted, people would just want to catch up. Maybe they just that's it, it's done and dusted. Anyway, we're going to go on to this bit now.
They give us two options. They give us regular soda with high fructose, and they give us diet soda with aspartame. They're both going to kill you slowly. So you do is none of the above. And it's to divide the nation, to keep the eyes off those that rule, and to keep us all fighting and divided. By, you know, a lot of people are passionate, a lot of people get upset when they see something in the news. They don't think for a second, they just believe it. And that's why, and I said this many times, the reason they must control the news and contrive the news is if they don't, they just put out random news stories. They don't have control. Faking the news, fabricating the news gives them complete control. When they put our news stories out, they know the result of the news story before they even publish it out in the media. So leaving real news out there 24/7, they don't have control, and they can't leave things a chance. That's why people have called me an auto hoaxer. Well, that's exactly what's going on. Where real news stories, they get covered, but they're only covered for a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes on CNN, then they're gone. The fake news stories are in the media day in and day out, and once they're gone, they're gonna bring it back up with some kind of side story to rekindle that flame with that older news story, like Trayvon Martin with Zimmerman being arrested every other month or every other week. That's keeping the Trayvon Martin story in the minds. Same with OJ, when they supposedly found a knife when they excavated around his property. They said they found a knife just outside the property itself on Rockingham. That's to keep the bogus story alive. So it's not hard to figure out. And of course, the further you go down the path of truth, the crazier you're going to sound to someone that's dead asleep. So you have to wake them up slowly. It's like anything else. It's like becoming a vegetarian. You're not going to have barbecue one night and the next day decide to be a vegetarian. You've got to do a slow cutoff. And that's also when you try to wake people up, you have to do it slowly. Don't throw too much at them at one time. It's got to be a slow breakaway from the mainstream media. You can't have someone that's 40 or 50 years old that depends on, say, CNN or Fox News for their information, for all these years, then they just shut it off. You got to break them away slowly to alternative.